Sex is the life force energy that runs through us all. Can you use sexual energy for your spiritual evolution? Or perhaps for emotional healing? Is it even possible? Clinical sexologist Dr. Martha Tarlee will explore all these and more on Eros Evolution on OMTimes Radio.
Hello, and welcome to Eros Evolution. This is where sexuality and spirituality meets. My name is Martha. I'm a clinical sexologist with a doctorate in human sexuality, and I'm from Eros Coaching. That's eroscoaching.com. In today's show, we are exploring all about porn, and today's show title is The Reality of Porn. As you probably know, there are a few topics that are more controversial than porn. And this is because porn stands so much in the intersection, not only of so many different points of view of what sexuality should be about, but also about what constitutes a visual medium and a piece of art in general. So what are their messages and how do they exert influence on our real world experiences and interactions? As with many other things, you can only approach them from different angles so as to get an idea of what constitutes the reality of porn, rather than decide once and for all what it really is. So in today's show, we'll be asking 5 different kinds of questions, 5 common questions that I get, and my guest, Dr. Jakob Pastoetter, gets when it comes to porn. So the questions that we will attempt to answer today: what makes porn porn? What is ethical porn? Whether porn is addictive? Whether there are harmful effects of porn? Whether porn perception differs between male, female? And a common question, which is, my partner watches a lot of porn. Is that cheating? So let me introduce more about my guest, Dr. Jakob Pastoetter. So he started as a spiritually interested teenager, delved into cultural anthropology, and developed a taste for sexology while doing research at the Kinsey Institute for Research in Sex, Gender, and Reproduction. Wrote his doctorate thesis on hardcore pornography and the constraint to self-restraint mechanisms of a civilizing process it is entangled in. So question, why are sexually explicit pictures only developed as a entertainment medium in the post-industrial Western societies? Yep, that's his doctorate thesis. So this is the reason why we decided that we have to do this episode. So Dr. Jakob Pastoetter, he has his PhD in education from the Hamburg in University, and became a ABS certified clinical sexologist at the American Academy of Clinical Sexology 2003, and has been teaching and tutoring there for the last 15 years while doing research media work and sex, couple, and life counseling. He's also the president of the German Society of the Social Scientific Sexuality Research, and is the organizer of the prestigious biannual conference under his organization. And since 2014, he has been providing sexual counseling for bi-national couples in English and German via Skype. So one of his websites is sexology.org. That's sexology, not with a Y, but with an IE. And he also he's going to have another website called liveyoursexuality.com. But you can find him on Facebook. That's Arrows Arising. So welcome to the show.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here again, and I'm looking forward to an interesting talk with you.
Yeah, I forgot to mention to listeners out there that Dr. Jakob was on this show 3 months ago, and I really had a good time with him, and so decided to invite him back. And that episode on June 1, 1st of June, was called Animated Sex, the Spirituality of Eros. So we delved into like Greek mythology and all that. It was super interesting for me. So today we are focusing more on porn. So Dr. Jakob, what makes porn porn in your opinion?
Well, I think it is always helpful to differentiate between so-called sexual explicit pictures, SEPs, SEPs, and pornography. Because in porn, you can find different aspects from SEPs, which are not in the SEPs in general. I'm afraid you need to define probably first what you are talking about. Often people claim that porn has been around till the dawn of time, and so it was in some kind natural to produce and to consume porn. But I think you have to keep in mind that porn is a completely new phenomenon, because modern porn is a so-called consumer's item. And a consumer's item exists only in a certain frame of time and in a certain type of society, which you can describe as a capitalistic society, which means a society where you judge things after their monetary value. So, more or less, without a monetary value, you don't get porn. You get just sexually explicit pictures. Today it is made and sold only because some people rightly think there's a market for it. That's not bad, that's not good, that's just the plain fact. Although most, if not all, cultures, on the other hand, know sexually explicit pictures, those pictures or statues or whatever were always integrated in a religious and educational or in a social background other than watch it and wank to it. Western sexually explicit pictures, on the other hand, did originally also function as a satire, as a means to make fun of the loose morals of the upper class and the lower and higher members of the cleric. No pun intended. Only later sexually explicit pictures and descriptions change into lust for money item. Modern porn is an integrated component of the very specific cultural period of our mass consumerism today. Porn does not treat people as people, but as a means to produce and excite sexual lust in consumers of porn. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So what you're saying is that previously it was meant to make fun of the upper class and exactly. Lower and upper members of the church.
Yeah.
And back then there was no porn, right? So it was, I guess, more like to express a way of life rather than to titillate and to get people excited. And I think when it's more part of life, there's also less taboo around it and shame.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because it was just another method to analyze the society and the wrongs in the society. More or less, you poke fun. You see when you let the trousers down of honorable people, it always makes those people less frightening. And in the 17th and 18th century, during the so-called period of enlightenment, it was very, very common to make those honorable people less look like the frightening authorities they are, but just more like ordinary people.
Yeah.
And to make people ordinary means let them have sex.
Yeah. I get it. It's just that back then, in those olden days, there was no moving images. There was no TV, and it was much later. So I see like they would maybe like carve sexually explicit images onto furniture, exactly. And that is their porn. You think?
I think one should discriminate between porn, which is a consumer's item to entice lust in a consumer, and sexually explicit pictures that can have a different reason for being created and being watched. For example, another thing which is very little known is that on many churches you will find so-called pornographic pictures, which means statues with erected penises or even copulating couples and so on. And this actually was also used to frighten the devil and because the devil doesn't like life. And the thing to create life, to have fun, is sex. And even the medieval church recognized the fact that the devil is not necessarily interested in sex, but he is frightened by real sex, by reproductive sex. Because
that is so interesting. That is so interesting. Thank you so much for that. I never knew that. Okay, so we have a break and we'll come back and talk more with Dr. Jakob Pastoetter.
Okay.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hi, I'm Kelly Fox, host and astrologer of The Astrology Show. Each week, I'll give you access to the current transits, which are a valuable tool that provide astrological information to help unlock the potential each of us has. Understanding the stars can help steer us in the right direction to make better informed choices. So if you're wondering what's going to happen in your week ahead, be sure to tune in to The Astrology Show for guidance, Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
Every 2 minutes, an American is sexually assaulted. The majority of victims know their attacker. It could be your friend, your neighbor, or someone you met at a party. If you said no, it's rape, and it's a crime. This is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Call the National Sexual Assault Hotline today at 1-800-656-HOPE or visit RAIN.org. That's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Hello, and welcome to Eros Evolution. You are listening to our show on the OMTimes Radio Network, and you can listen to this show by going to the link omtimes.com/mobile. With this link, you can listen to the show without needing to download any app. So if you want to listen or have access to every single episode of Eros Evolution, you can go to Google and just key in Eros Evolution at a glance. You'll be able to access this link on my website that has every single episode. So it's easy, I guess. At one glance, you can just scroll up and down and have access to every single show, including the previous episode where we had Dr. Jakob Pastoetter on it, and we talked about Greek mythology and the origin of Eros. So that was a very interesting show for me, and because I enjoyed having him so much that we decided to bring him back for today's show. Today we're talking about the reality of porn, and just before the break we were beginning to define what porn is. So I'd like to move on to the next question, which is about ethical porn. So there's a term called ethical porn. And for you, Dr. Jakob, what do you feel is ethical porn? Maybe you could define it for us.
It's a relatively new term, which is important because, the main criticism of pornography starting in the 70s and 80s was that it is very humiliating especially for the women who are producing it. So I think the concept of ethical porn is quite important because too often porn is produced under actually humiliating and especially misogynistic circumstances. It has very often only a specific male view of what is sexually arousing. Women get often treated just as means to achieve what is called sexual veracity, which often includes aggression and dominance. We always have to keep in mind that sexuality is actually something where you hardly can exclude aggression and dominance at all. This is because sexuality has started as something to produce offspring, and dominance and aggression are signs, kind of evolutionary markers of strong genes. This is not politically correct, but this is why sexuality is such a minefield. When you talk about sex, you always also talk more or less implicitly or explicitly about aggression and dominance. So this aggression and dominance you also have, of course, in descriptions and pictures of sexuality, which is porn. There is this wonderful bon mot that almost everything is about sex, but sex is the only thing that is not so much about sex. Sex is actually about power. So it is, of course, from a more civilized point of view, very problematic that women are often presented as helpless victims of their own lust, induced by the vision and action of the penis. This is very distracting. Of course, it is completely fine to be fascinated, actually charmed or put under a spell when you see your partner nude or when you see his sexually aroused genitals. This is a very strong sexual trigger, of course. But since porn has to achieve a kind of veracity so that it can work in the brain of the consumer, it has also to respect that this dominance can be troubling and can lead to men thinking it is okay to have this aggression and dominance with whatever women they encounter in real life.
Yeah. So one of the things that go on.
So when actresses spilled the beans, only of course after they stopped working in the business, because they simply couldn't afford to do this before, their memories tell actually a very sad story. However, this was never a problem for the biggest chunk of consumers because A, you can hardly see the humiliation process during production in the finished product, and B, the production was for the longest time in the hands of the criminal mafia and therefore hidden from the public. This has changed in the 90s dramatically. It's a bit like with those who are doing drugs who just don't want to see how much misery their habit creates. even if one has moral or feminist arguments for total porn prohibition, at least I think with the concept of ethical porn, one should make sure that those who choose to work in this business can do so in acceptable working conditions.
Yeah. So another thing that I know about ethical porn, it's a little bit like fair trade, where you can allow yourself to feel good about it because the performers are contractually given fair wages, and also they have clear agreements about the acts that they are willing and not willing to do, and they are not forced to do anything that they don't want to do.
Exactly.
So this is why I feel like ethical porn is something that more people need to know about.
Yeah, and there is also STI testing included, of course, because nothing is more humiliating than getting infected with a sexually transmitted disease, of course.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question, whether you feel that porn is addictive.
Actually, this is a very difficult question because it all depends on how you define addiction. There are two totally opposite points of view. One might go as far as, on the one hand, there is no addiction at all, besides the fact that the body has an amazing resilience for substances of all kinds, and you need ever more of the same stuff to get a high. Or, on the other hand, everything is addictive, like, for example, also sugary food. Porn is probably addictive in the sense of four different lines of arguments. First, porn gives you pleasant feelings, which include arousal, which include horniness for very prolonged periods. When you have sex with a partner, it's not very usual that you have sex with your partner for 4 hours in a row. Simply because you get tired, simply because your body needs a break, simply because you need food. With porn, it is totally different. There are many people, some of them claim they have a problem. Others say, oh, it is a wonderful way to express my sexuality. They sit for 4 hours in front of their computers and are watching one porn flick after the other while masturbating. They can do this because, well, there is very little body movement and they always get new stimulus. Then B, pornography isn't a stimulant that exists in nature. You have to imagine that even that the most depraved Roman emperor, who was famous for their long orgies, didn't see as many POV shots of genitals and different shapes of nude people in their whole lifetime, which is now possible for a porn consumer to watch in as little as one prolonged session of 3 or 4 hours. Simply because you can switch from one flick to the other and always have a new stimulus, while even at an orgy, you rarely had more than 100 persons at one time present. So this is a very strong visual stimulus, one has to be sure. Then C, there is, of course, a huge market for it, like with drugs. which means that porn actually is produced in a way that makes it, let it put in quotes, addictive. As with convenient food, for example, it's just the same. Fast food is just the same. You don't produce fast food to feed people. You produce fast food to get people addicted to it. And D, you may come to the decision that real sex is too much of a hassle compared with the availability of huge amounts of free porn. Just one number, on Xvideos alone, there are at present over 7 million clips and movies available without any age restriction or even without any money demands. So it would be from the point of view of a capitalist very stupid to make a product that doesn't get people hooked up.
Okay. So just to summarize some of the things that you're saying that porn is addictive because it's probably addictive in the sense that people are producing prolonged periods of horniness through the images, and it is not a stimuli that exists in nature. There's a huge market for it, and that some people may come to the conclusion that real sex is too much of a hassle. So we have a break, and we'll come back and speak with Dr. Jakob more.
Free your mind with OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
What's up? This is Brad and Mike from Lincoln Park for Life Beat, the music industry fights AIDS. Listen up, times are tough and you get a lot of things thrown your way. If you're being pressured to have sex and you're not ready, then say no. If you're having sex, be smart and use protection. Respect yourself and protect yourself.
For more information, call the National AIDS Hotline at 1-800-342-AIDS or log on to www.lifebeat.org.
And welcome back to Eros Evolution. Just before the break, we were exploring about the question whether porn is addictive. And today we are talking about the reality of porn with Dr. Jakob Pastoetter. He is the president of the German Society of the Social Scientific Sexuality Research. And he has a lot of experience teaching tutoring for the last 15 years. And he got interested in sexology while doing research at the Kinsey Institute for Research in Sex, Gender, and Reproduction. You can find him at the website that's sexology, sexologie.org. And he's on Facebook, Arrows Arising, and he is the editor of the German English book series, Sexology Crosswise with Springer Science, and is writing a book on the development of German sex education. So he's very busy, and he does work with people, especially biannual couples in English and German. And so just before break, we were exploring the question whether porn is addictive, and how about the argument of porn not being addictive?
Well, of course, one has to keep in mind that porn, although we can observe certain hormonal changes in the body when you watch porn, it doesn't work like the so-called charm. It doesn't work like a substance like heroin or cocaine, which gives you a flash. We know that things to become addictive, they have to create a very quick biochemical reaction from your body. When it comes to porn, it is less than that, because it has always to cater to your individual taste. So it is more like a kind of process. Usually this process starts with you being already in a state of horniness, and you think, oh, well, it would be nice to enhance that horniness a bit more. And then you are going to look for sexual stimuli. In the good old times, you were just walking around. For example, in European cities, there was this tradition of evening stroll. And the evening stroll was nothing else than a means to hook up visually. Of course, this had to be kept in a very safe frame, but nevertheless, it led later to a hookup and the possibility of knocking at the window of the girl who you developed a fancy for, while seeing her walking and smiling at you and while laughing at you. And there was a chance to get this through. And porn, in my opinion, works somehow similar. You have already a certain horniness in you, and then you go look at the internet where to find something that meets your fancy. Of course, there are some harmful effects to porn, but those aren't necessary occurring in the way like with heroin or cocaine, because there is no flesh involved. It is more a kind of process, and it is more a kind of habit. And of course, this habit can give you trouble. Watching porn can become self-conditioning, especially when you start at a very early age, because porn is, and we have to keep that in mind, is not real sex, but porn tells an adult fairy tale about sex. That's a problematic thing, because people start to think sex has to be in the real life like it is on porn. But nobody would say that life has to be a fairy tale with fairies, with witches, with princesses, and so on. We always have to make this difference. But the younger you are, the less you are able to see that fairy tale-like quality of porn. But the arousal you get out of porn is huge. In real life, people look different, behave differently, they smell and taste differently, and they have an individual idea of what makes good sex. So actually, with a partner, you always have to find an agreement about sex. With porn, you just step along. When you see something you find less arousing. Always looking for something which is more arousing. In a relationship, partners usually don't appreciate such a behavior. So porn is always, to keep that in mind, a narration about sex, not sex itself. Porn has always the specific point of a narrator, which is, of course, the point of view of a camera. Genitals are dramatically illuminated and enlarged. And while in real life you always have to look for an occasion for having sex, in porn the occasion is permanent. You see, it's the total difference. While in normal life, sex is something which is quite rare, and which is difficult to get. In porn, it is the life and nothing else. In porn, they don't eat, they don't work, they don't have another life. They just have sex. Porn has reduces in that way the perception of sex also only to two senses, looking and listening, while real sex is much more about the other three senses of touching, smelling, and tasting the other person. And we don't speak about the soul of the other person, of course. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So I appreciate how you are describing the differences between the two. And I guess over a long term, this can create real impact on the way a person perceives sex, and also their ability to connect with a partner. So
this is the reason I think, Mark, and you agree, will agree that so many people come to see our sex therapists, and with the question, how can we deal with the porn consumption of one partner or the other? It's not so much about the porn consumption itself. It is more about that the one partner enjoys porn, but the other partner realizes that he or she is not good enough for the sexual tastes of the other. And you know, it is always so difficult. I think it's one of the real difficult tasks of us human beings to decide what is fantasy, what is just imagination, which is fine, which is good, and what is reality. Imagination can be a wonderful thing to relax and to masturbate to, but very often imagination doesn't give you the means to produce a meaningful sexual connection with your partner.
Yeah. Okay, so let's. We have 4 minutes to break, so I guess we can begin on this question, which is, what are some of the differences when it comes to porn between people who identify as male and people who identify as female? So I guess I'm referring more to people who are heterosexuals. So what do you feel are some of the differences when it comes to gender, you think?
Well, I think the main differences are male genitals react generally to looks, while female genitals react to movements. You know, this is still quite groundbreaking research done by Meredith Chivers in Canada and the USA, because it was always clear that, strangely enough, both men and women react to porn movies. Reacting meaning their genitals are getting aroused. But the men usually accept this and think it even something good and nice to experience. Women also experience it bodily, but their mind and their heart tells another story. They say that what they see is disgusting, is obnoxious, is nothing they would like. At least this was true for many, many decades. This has changed somewhat in the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, since more and more women also consume pornography, but still not in the same quantity as men. And so we have to assume that the approach to sexual activity, to watching sexual activity, must be somehow different between male and female. For the longest time, people, sex researchers especially, just claimed, well, women are lying. They say that the body speaks a totally different language than what the woman tells us, and we believe only the body, so we have to liberate those women so they can enjoy pornography. But it seems now that the story is actually much more differentiated, and that it is perfectly okay that males and females have a different approach to pornography. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, this is really interesting. So let's discuss more after this break.
Okay.
Bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, this is Julie Geigel.
And I'm Susan Schuler.
And I'm Lori Walker.
And we are
the Psychic Angel Channelers
from Angel Talk Tuesday.
Tune in every week at 10 a.m. Eastern on OMTimesRadio.com.
The angels have heard your call and are here to help.
Are you ready to receive?
Bathe in the beautiful vibrational frequency to help you heal, expand, and remember your magnificence with Angel Talk Tuesday.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
To get in the way before it happens.
To get a friend home safe.
And to not blame the victim.
It's on us.
To look out for each other.
To not look the other way.
It's on us to stand up.
To step in.
To take responsibility.
It's on us, all of us,
to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
And welcome back to the last 15 minutes of today's show. We are with Dr. Jakob Pastoetter, and we're talking about the reality of porn. And so far on today's show, we've explored the link with porn, different aspects of porn, what it makes porn, what is ethical porn, whether porn is addictive, whether porn is not addictive, what are the harmful effects of porn. And just before break, we were beginning to explore porn perception differences when it comes to male and female. And so what Dr. Jakob was saying is that there seems to be an emphasis when it comes to males that they react more to looks, and for females more to emotions. and they did this by measuring, keeping track of how the genitals would get engorged. So you also mentioned that men in general need more stimulus or different kinds of stimulus to react fast in the reproduction department. So this is a link with premature ejaculation. So what are your thoughts on that?
First of all, because I have to correct this. Women are not so much into emotion when it comes to porn, but into motion, which means into movements. But I will explain that later. Women are usually slower starters and need some kind of introduction to sex emotionally. That's true. But as well as with regard to build up enough arousal by tactile stimulation. That's something amazingly very new, although many women could have told sex researchers that it works the way, but horniness, sexual feelings are something which comes to males more internally than to women. This has probably something to do with the sex hormone testosterone, which fluctuates over the day very, very strongly in male. It peaks in the morning and then goes down until its lowest level in the early night, and then starts to peak up again. So men experience a huge change in how they experience their genitals and how they experience horniness. Women, on the other hand, also have this change of the male and sex hormone testosterone in them, but it is much, much slower and not over the day, but over the month. So there's a huge difference. So women usually need first tactile stimulation before they can experience sexual libido at all. I doubt, however, that women need better storylines. That's one of the stories people tell you when it comes to porn. The storylines are so boring or non-existing. But actually, if women need better storylines, when did 50 Shades of Grey have such an influence? I think 50 Shades of Grey would have put doubt into this assumption. But why do women react differently than men to, let's call it, audio-visual stimuli, sexual stimuli? Apparently, evolutionary psychology shows that it is important for men to react to many different stimuli and to react fast to those stimuli to be successful in the reproduction compartment. Because as the saying goes, the early bird gets the worm, it is also the male who gets faster aroused, also has more interest and more energy, sexual energy, to follow up through to coitus. For women, it is, with regard to this, much more important to create an emotional bond with the partner, because he has to stay long enough around to help you to raise the offspring during the long period the mother and the child spends together in the so-called social womb, which means that evolutionary psychology often thought it is only sperm and egg that's interesting in sex. But the more interesting thing with all higher mammals is actually that we don't spend a couple of months in the body warmth of our mother, but we spend actually up to 15 years in a very close social bond. So it makes no sense to reduce sex just to the function of getting the sperm to the egg. We always also have to accept that it is important to keep us together. A different question is, of course, the reaction of the genitals, which is quite the same in men and women, however, again, for different reasons. Men have to ejaculate fast, less some other men are faster. Women, on the other hand, have developed genital arousal when confronted with sexual images as a protection system. And this leads us to the darker sides of sexuality, to human sexuality especially, because when you look at history, when you look into the Bible, when you look at today's behavior of tribes, let's say in the Amazon or on Papua New Guinea, you will have to realize that sex is usually not the most important thing between couples. That's nice, that's a romantic image of sex. But actually, genetic diversity is achieved through warfare, which means that the women of the enemy tribe are regarded as booty for the males of the other tribe who wins the war. And you can see there, sex has apparently, in the long tradition of human development, not so much to do with love, that would be nice, but apparently a lot to do with aggression and with dominance. And so for women, it is a survival function to react to sexual stimuli, because this signals now is the enemy tribe arriving. I have to be bodily sexually aroused, because otherwise I would get hurt by all those males who think I am their bounty. Does that make sense?
Yes. So
very sad truth.
Yeah.
And
so I guess we should move. So we should move quickly to the next question, because we have like 2 more minutes to wrap up. So do you consider people who watch a lot of porn, you consider that cheating?
Well, actually, as long as this watching of porn doesn't affect the couple, it is perfectly okay. But unfortunately, we see very often that men use porn to hide their sexuality from their partners. And when you use porn or an affair to hide yourself, your sexuality from your partner, to make it an excuse not to have sex with your partner, of course you have a problem, because still, although many people maybe wouldn't agree, it is true that a functioning relationship needs sex. And if one partner bails out and does something else, like cheating with an affair or cheating with porn, I would say that's not okay. And it is cheating, however you call it.
Great. So thank you so much for your time and for answering the top 6 questions that I received when it comes to porn.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I have been with Dr. Jakob Pastoetter, and he's the president of the German Society of Social Scientific Sexuality Research, and you can find him at sexology.org. That's GIE.org, and you can find him on Facebook, Arrows Arising, and he is working on a book, The Development of German Sex Education, and soon he will have another website, liveyoursexuality.com. So next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back the guest that I couldn't patch her in 2 weeks ago, and it's going to be where we're exploring healing from child sex abuse with Brooke Woon. And so stay tuned to Arrow's Evolution. This is where we always explore the link between sex and spirit. And for today, we've been exploring the influence of porn. And so this has been very interesting. I've also had previously Roger Levy, who came on episode 121. Be sure to check out Arrow's Evolution next week. It's been great having you, and I will see you next week. Bye.